Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this DevOps.com workshop, brought to you by Techstrong and ConnectAll. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we have an exciting workshop for you today. First, I do have just a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of this workshop, or you'd like to rewatch, refollow along, or maybe share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, and I'm sure you will since this is a hands-on workshop, we want you to send those in using the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of your screen. That's also where you're going to find the chat tab, where we want you to get to know your fellow audience members. Let us know your thoughts throughout today's workshop, or maybe just from where you're joining us. The slides for today's workshop are available in the handouts panel. So if you'd like to download those are available for you. And of course, before we close, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around. So our workshop title today is Accelerate Software Delivery with Value Stream Mapping. And joining me is Tim Styling, Manager of Product Marketing at ConnectAll. Tim, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to let you take us away from here.
Awesome. Thanks for such a great intro, Cody. And thank you, everybody, for joining today's session. Really excited to get hands-on with you in the Designer and help walk you through just some of these value stream mapping techniques to help you start to visualize your software delivery value stream. So let's go ahead and get things started. So just as a quick agenda for today, we're going to begin by talking through some of the basics of value stream mapping, kind of laying the foundation of what we're going to be doing here today. Then we'll walk through the value stream designer. We'll get you registered if you're not registered already, and we'll kind of walk through how to use the tool, go through some of the nuts and bolts so that you're able to be off to the races once we get started on the hands-on portion. The third part, and where we'll be spending the bulk of our time, is walking through an assessment of your software delivery value stream. So guiding you through thinking about what your end-to-end process looks like so that you can then build it in the designer as we're going along. Then after that, we'll talk about how to use your value stream map. So some different techniques that can help you take what you build in today's session and be able to act on it. And then we'll end with a summary and any questions that you may have. So by attending this workshop, you'll learn what value stream mapping is and why it's worth your time to do it. You'll get hands-on practice using the free Value Stream Designer tool to start building your own value stream map. You'll create a very basic toolchain design of your software delivery value stream. And we'll conclude by talking about how eliminating waste can help you optimize the map that you've created. So to get things started, let's cover some basics. What is value stream mapping? Why was it originally created in manufacturing and how was it used there? How are we adapting it to software delivery, which I think will be more applicable to most of the audience here? And why it matters, why you should care. So I want you to think about your software delivery process. All of us start and end with the same steps. It begins with someone either having an idea for a great new feature or a customer or internal SME finding a production issue and logging an incident. And it ends with the code being deployed to a happy customer. But what happens in the middle is where a lot of times we can be unsure. During this middle section, we can sometimes only see the sliver that we ourselves are participating in. Or there may be steps that exist in here that we just don't know, that perhaps whichever team is in charge of that silo is taking and running with. Perhaps they've created their own processes and their own steps that we may not be able to see on a day-to-day basis. And if you ever feel the same way, if you have questions or curiosity about what has to happen in order to get from point A to point B, you are not alone. This is something that can be very common. And if you get a bunch of people in the room together and try to get them to agree on it, there's a lot of argument, a lot of back and forth, a lot of trying to figure out which order the different steps should go in, who's responsible for them. And it can start a great discussion. It can get sometimes heated, but at the end, sometimes your mind is just completely blown by what it takes to create software. And sometimes things stick out as just not making a lot of sense. Now, if we're trying to navigate through software delivery and trying to figure out how we can be better and how we can be more efficient in our processes, sometimes we feel like this guy here. You're lost in the woods and you're wearing a blindfold. If you can't see what your value stream is, if you can't see the individual steps that it takes to get from beginning to end, you're going to have a difficult time making meaningful changes. So what we need is a map to help us understand not only the route that we're currently taking from point A to point B, but also to help us see, is there a more efficient route? Are we taking the long way around? Are we, pulling off at the wrong exit and going the wrong direction for a little while? And that's what a map, in this case, a value stream map, can help us to do. Now, before we get into value stream mapping, I want to talk about what a value stream is. According to the Gemba Academy, a value stream is all of the steps, both value added and non-value added, required to take a product or service from the raw material state into the waiting arms of a happy customer. Now, one thing you may notice about that definition, there's nothing about software delivery in there. And that's because value streams exist all around us. Whether or not we can see the value stream, whether or not we understand the value stream, so many things in our lives are a value stream. I wrote a blog about my morning routine and how, making the coffee, setting up the pot, turning it on, that's all part of a value stream. And I also used to work as a delivery driver for Domino's. So one of the things that I thought about here was a pizza delivery value stream. So we see at the beginning, we have the order being placed. So the customer's hungry, they want a pizza. At the very end, we see that the delivery is completed. All of those steps in between that are required to get from me, the hungry customer, placing an order, to the hot and ready pizza being delivered at my door is outlined in this value stream. And you'll see there's a number of steps, a number of team members that need to take part in each of these steps, and a number of tools like the oven, the pizza box, the dough that are required in order to create this pizza. Now, if we look at a software delivery value stream, you'll see that it operates in a very similar way. There's a beginning and an end. Perhaps it's an incident being reported that causes us to begin work. And it ends with the code being deployed to a happy customer. And in between, what you see are all of the steps that are required to get from beginning to end, some of which are value added, some of which are non-value added. So what is value stream mapping? Now that we understand what a value stream is, value stream mapping is simply the method that we use to document, analyze, and improve this flow of information and materials. And what we want to see at the end is the happy customer. Us delivering the code, us delivering the new feature, us delivering the bug fix that they need in order to get the most value out of our software. And so as we think about the origins of value stream mapping, it began in manufacturing. And I want you to imagine being in a factory where they're building something, perhaps they're manufacturing doors. You can see the process that it takes from beginning, where you get the wood and you get the brass that's going to eventually be the doorknob, all the way to the end where you have the finished door ready for delivery. In between, you could walk through the factory floor and be able to see all of the steps, all of the machinery, all of the cells with all of the team members performing the actions that they need to do in order to create those doors. You can physically see all of that. And so in manufacturing, this is what a value stream map might look like. You'll see you have the flow of information as well as the flow of materials. And you'll see each of the individual steps along the way, how much time they take, all being controlled from a central production control center. In software, however, we have a bit of a different issue. As we're walking around in our office and as we're looking in the different cubicles or as we're looking in the different conference rooms, it's always been very difficult to see the flow because there is none of that machinery moving back and forth. People are working individually on their computers. They're working individually in their teams. And it can be very difficult because there's not that physical passing of the material along. It's code being developed in an electronic area, being passed between different tools. And as difficult as it's always been to see, in today's world, it's so much more difficult than even that. Since we've moved to remote environments or hybrid environments, it's just become that much more difficult to see the flow. And it's become that much more important that we can visualize the flow through mapping our value stream. So here's a way that a value stream map could look in software. You'll see that kind of similarly to the manufacturing one. We've got the different stages. We have the different steps within each stage, and you see the different tools and the different parts of the process that exist within each of these stages. And so as we start to look at this, we can begin to visualize what it takes to get from beginning to end of our software delivery lifecycle. And in doing so, we make an invisible process now visible. So why should we bother with any of this? Well, all of us within IT organizations, we're aiming for particular goals. Perhaps we need to bring our costs down to meet a new budget. Perhaps we need to increase our delivery speed so that we can start to deploy every other week. Perhaps we need to improve our quality, or perhaps we need to improve our customer satisfaction by decreasing the time to resolution. And in order to do these things, we have to assess and change our process. But if we can't see our process, then we're just firing into the dark. We're like this gentleman here, firing his arrow at the target while wearing a blindfold. It's just as likely to end up in the field next door as it is to end up here on the target. Likewise, if we're aiming for our goals without being able to see our process, then it's going to be very difficult to make the right changes, because a change that we make blindly could negatively impact a part of the value stream that we don't even see on a day-to-day basis. So why do we use our map? It allows you to know where you stand today so you can see the current state. It gives you a structure to be able to contextualize the different measurements and the different data that you receive as you start to measure each of these individual processes and as you start to measure how much time it takes from beginning to end. It allows you to see and immediately find areas of opportunity for improvement. And then it allows you to continuously evaluate and continuously improve the process that you've set up. That's why this value stream mapping exercise and value stream mapping in general is not something that you do once and then you set it and forget it. Your current state 3 months from now may and probably should look differently than it does today as you constantly try to improve. And so you need to continue to come back to this anytime you make a major process change, or even just on a quarterly basis or on some other structured time frame, so that you can constantly assess to see how your how your processes are changing and how you can do things more efficiently and effectively so you can always be improving. So now let's talk about the Value Stream Designer. This is a free mapping tool that's available on valuestreammanagement.com. And if you'd like to participate in the hands-on portion of today's training, this is where you'll need to go in order to register and get access to the tool. So we'll start by talking about what the designer is. We'll discuss how to get registered and how everything looks when you get started with the designer. And then we'll walk through a couple practice exercises to get you comfortable with using the designer before we move on to the assessment portion. Now, one thing you'll notice in the chat, and thank you, Cody, I see you already responded there. You'll see in the chat at the very top in a sticky note, if you click that, it will take you to valuestreammanagement.com, where you'll see the area to get registered for the tool. So what exactly are you registering for? And what is this free Value Stream Designer tool? Well, it's a mapping tool that's specifically built for software delivery teams. And because it's specifically targeted for software delivery, you'll see that it comes preloaded with tools, templates, and icons that are relevant for software delivery teams. You're going to see specific tools that make sense for software teams, and you're going to see icons that are relevant to software delivery organizations. And finally, this tool is created for collaboration. We'll talk in a little bit about how you can share this with colleagues within your organization. But when it comes to thinking about the value stream, no person is an island. We each have areas of expertise, and even if we can see the whole thing and we kind of have responsibility for every part of the value stream, perhaps we're managing it, perhaps we're overseeing it, we may not have the level of expertise that people on the ground have every day. Likewise, if we are experts in one part of the value stream, we may not know for sure what happens before or after us. And that's okay. That's why this tool is made for collaboration, so that these value stream maps can be the beginnings of conversations. And you guys can make sure that it's as accurate as possible, so that when you make changes, you're doing so in the most relevant way. So now let's talk about getting access to the value stream designer. As I mentioned before, you will need to navigate to valuestreammanagement.com in order to gain access to the designer tool. Once you're there, if you've already created an account with us previously, you will click the login button in order to, well, log in. If you've never used this tool and you need to register, then in the upper right-hand corner, you will need to click the register button if you're a new user. So once you've clicked register, if this is your first time using the tool, you'll need to create a username, enter your first and last name, and you'll need to create a password, something that's easy to remember. And then you'll need to enter and confirm your email address, at which point you can register for the tool. And once you've done each of these steps, you'll see a screen that looks like this, saying, congratulations, you're registered, great job. So once you've done that, you can click the little pencil icon in the upper the upper right-hand corner. Sorry about that. And once you've clicked the login button, you'll see a screen that looks like this. And if you have already created an account and you're logging in again, this is the screen that you'll see the first time. So put in your username, your password, and log in, and you are off to the races. So I'll go ahead and give everyone about 30 seconds or so here to walk through each of these steps. I'll come back over here, kind of leave this up, and go ahead and get yourself signed up. Again, if you need to navigate to valuestreammanagement.com, you'll see it in the sticky note above the chat icon, above the chat section. You can click on that, it'll open a new tab, and you'll be able to register right from there. So I'll give things another 10 or 15 seconds, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay, so once you've registered for the designer, the first screen you'll see looks kind of like this. So on this screen, the first thing you'll notice is that there's a welcome and there's a video. Now, you don't need to watch that right now. We're going to cover pretty much everything that's in that video during the session today. But if you ever need a refresher, or if you have a colleague that you're sending this over to and they need just a quick primer on how to use the tool, that video will be very helpful for that. The next section you'll see is a plus sign icon with new underneath it. And what you can do in this area is, as you can imagine, start a new value stream diagram. But what's very cool about this too is if you scroll to the right, you're able to see a number of templates that can help you get an initial structure down, that can help you, if you already have an idea of how you want to set up this value stream, keep you from starting from scratch. So these templates can be very useful as you're building out the different value stream maps that are associated with your organization. If you see the third icon, that allows you to open up a previously saved value stream diagram. So if you ever want to get back to the value stream diagram that we built today, then you'll be able to access that from here. And then finally, you'll see here that you can open up a value stream diagram that's been shared with you. I'll show you how to share your value stream diagrams as we continue on in today's session. But this is an important section because if any of your colleagues share a value stream map with you, or if you share a map with your colleagues, this is where you or they will be able to access it so that you guys can work together in order to complete that. So as our first exercise of the day, we're going to get started building the value stream map. So I'm going to show you how it's done here, then walk through the process myself with you so you can see it in real time, and then you'll be able to do it yourself as well. And that's how I'm going to structure most of the sections here, so that after I tell you how it's done, you'll be able to see how it works in the program itself, and then you'll have a little bit of time to do it. So the first thing that you need to do, if you have not done so already, is click on the new icon on your home screen. From there, you'll want to scroll to find the blank diagram template. Oh my goodness, I said scroll left up there too. So you're going to scroll to the right and then find your blank diagram template. You'll click on that template once you've selected it. And then as soon as you've clicked on the template, you'll see a pop-up that looks like this on your canvas. You simply need to enter a name for your diagram, and then you will click Save, which will allow you to begin your value stream diagram. So let me go ahead and show you how this works. I've got valuestreammanagement.com opened up. I come in here, I log in, and when you log in, this is the screen you will see with the video. So I'm going to come down here and click New. And one thing you may notice as well is actually behind me, I've already got a value stream. This is the last one I was working on. So if I want to just go right back to it, all I would have to do is hit X here. But so that we can participate together and build out our value streams from scratch, I'm going to scroll down here and see if I can't find the blank diagram template. So I will click this and I will say value stream workshop. So we'll see this here, and I will click Save, and you'll see that I've now got a blank canvas to work on, and you'll see the name of the value stream that I've got here. So I'm going to switch back to my other screen. And I will give you about 20 seconds to go ahead and do that yourselves. Go ahead and get yourself a new value stream map opened. I'll check the chat just to see if there's any questions. Okay, so I do see one person asked if the recording will be available after the meeting. Yes, we will have the recording available after the meeting, and I'll be following up, making sure that you have a link to that. So keep an eye out for that. You will have access to the recording. You're welcome to forward that to anyone that you so choose on your team, and that will be available today. I'll give things another 10 seconds or so. Okay. So now that we've begun our value stream map, and that we've named our diagram, let's take a walk through and see some of the options that we have in order to build out this diagram. And we're going to practice taking these different options and placing them on our canvas. And we're going to start to see how a story will begin to be built out and how we'll begin to tell and walk through how this software delivery value stream flows. So the first thing we're going to take a look at, on the left-hand side, the first option that we have are your application icons. So if you click that, you'll see a menu pop up that looks like this. Now, once you're in here, you're going to want to locate whichever tool you're going to be using. So you can use the search bar in order to search for specific tools, or you can scroll down in order to find specific tools that are relevant to you. Now, as you're going through, if there's, we have hundreds of different options within here for you to choose from. However, if there is a tool that you use within your value stream and it's not listed, you can actually upload your own icons into here so that you can demonstrate that that tool is part of the end-to-end value stream. And I'll show you how to do that. I'll show you how to do that here shortly. But once you've found the tool that you want, you're going to want to click and hold down your mouse and then drag and drop that tool onto the canvas wherever you would like to place it. So let's actually practice that. Let's run through a quick exercise to see how that works. So I want you to open up your app icons menu, search for Servicenow, and then once you've done so, click and hold the Servicenow icon and drag and drop the icon onto the canvas. So we're going to practice using the search functionality here. I will hop over to the other screen and I will walk through this with you. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click my application icon. I will click in the search button and I will search for Servicenow. And when I do, you'll see that I have a few options. I'm going to go ahead and hold down my mouse on the Servicenow icon. I will drag and drop it over here. And you will then see it is now available to be used on my canvas. So go ahead and do this yourself. Drag and drop the Servicenow icon over onto the canvas. I'll give you guys about 15 to 20 seconds in order to do that. Okay. So once you have the Servicenow icon available on the canvas, the next area we're going to look at is for your flow icons. Now, your flow icons are going to be very useful because not every step of the process is going to require a tool. There's some things that are going to be done manually. There's other things like approvals that are going to be more of a person than a tool. And so this is where the flow icons can come into play. These are very useful for any of those manual type steps that are not guided by a tool. So if you click the flow icons, you'll see that there's a menu like this that shows up. You can search for specific icons or scroll down in the same way that you would for the tool icons. And so once you've done this, you can drag and drop it onto the canvas in the same way as your tools. So let's go through a quick practice exercise. So what I'm going to have you do is click and open the flow icons. And instead of searching, I'm going to have you scroll down to the IT section. I believe that's the third section down, but I'll be able to check here in a minute. And then once you've scrolled down to the IT section, I want you to grab, click and hold the call icon. So you'll see that it looks like a little phone. And from there, I want you to drag and drop the call icon onto the canvas. And I want you to repeat the same thing with the letter icon as well. So when this is all said and done, we're going to have Servicenow, the letter icon, and the call icon available for use on our canvas. So let me go ahead and switch over to this screen. So I'm going to click the flow icons. I will scroll down to the IT section, which is actually fourth. So it's the fourth section from the top. And then from here, I will grab the call icon that looks like a little phone, and I will drag and drop it here onto the canvas. So I will come back over here, and I will do the same thing with the letter icon. So you'll see that now I have the phone, the letter, and Servicenow. So I want you to do that for me. I'll switch back over to the other screen. Go ahead and scroll down to the IT section under flow icons and drag and drop the call icon as well as the letter icon onto the canvas. So then we can practice starting to add more and more of these options to our value stream. So I'll give you about 15 seconds to finish this part of the process. Okay. So now that we have these 3 icons available on our canvas, let's go ahead and take a look at flow shapes. So that's going to be the 3rd option that you have on the left-hand side. And when you click flow shapes, you'll see a menu that looks like this. Now, instead of being icons, these are shapes that are used to help continue to tell a story. Perhaps we want to say, we want to put one of these, these circles with the cross through it saying, this is a no-go, this is something that we need to eliminate. Or perhaps we want to put some other symbol that demonstrates something with our value stream. It just helps to continue to tell the story. And now these work the same way. You're able to scroll up and down this list, click on the shape that you want, and drag and drop these shapes on the canvas. And then from there, you can manipulate them so that they're different sizes, and we'll actually walk through that here in a quick sec. So what we're going to do here is we're going to open flow shapes, and this will be an exercise, so go ahead and do this for yourself. We'll open the flow shapes. We will click and hold the rectangle shape. And then as we drag and drop that onto the canvas, I want you to resize the rectangle so that it's covering all of the different icons that we have on the canvas so far. So when you click on the rectangle, when you single click on it, you'll see that there are those little squares in the different corners. If you grab one of those and stretch it, you'll be able to resize the rectangle so that it covers each of these different icons. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my screen. I will click on flow shapes. I'll grab the rectangle and drag and drop it here. And you'll see here's the little squares for me to be able to resize. I'll grab this one and I will stretch my rectangle until all of these icons are covered. And so you'll see we're starting to create a group within this. And the idea in this case is I'm creating a stage. I'm showing that each of these icons all fit in a single stage. And this is what we're starting to build out. So each of these steps alone seem very minuscule, but when put together, they're going to create and tell an awesome story. So as we come back over here, I want you to go ahead and finish dragging, dropping, and resizing the rectangle. So I'll give you guys another 10 seconds or so to do that. All right. So now that we have our new rectangle, before we move on to the next section, I want to show you some really cool stuff that we can do with these shapes now that we have them on our canvas. If you double click your shape, what you'll see is that you've got an excellent menu here that shows you each of the different options that we have within this shape. So you'll see that we're able to do a few different things with this. You can add text to your shape. You can change the text font, the size, the properties, and the alignment of your shape. We're able to change the color, so the background color of the shape, the border color, and the thickness of the border for our shape. We can change the layering, so we can move it forward or move it backwards so that it's either covering things or it's not covering things. And then we can add or remove a grouping if we want to group a number of these different things together. So let's go ahead and practice with this shape and start to see how each of these things and each of these properties can be used. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to type out incident handling. So I want you to type out the phrase incident handling here in the text. I want you to then align that text to the top center of your shape so that it shows up on the top center of the rectangle. I want you to change the background color to white, which is going to be that first square that you see there. And when you do that, you're going to notice everything disappears. And that's okay, because what we're then going to do is send this shape to the back so that all of those icons will show up. So let me show you how that works here in my designer. So I'm going to double click on my shape. And then from here, I will enter the text. So I'll say incident handling. And you'll see that shows up right smack dab in the middle of my rectangle. Well, I don't want that. That's going to get in the way of my icons. So I'm going to come over here, click these 4 lines, and then click the up arrow in the center. And you'll see that incident handling has now moved to the top center of my rectangle. And if I wanted to, I could change the font, I could change the size. You don't have to worry about that. But what you do need to do is come down here to properties, and the first square on the left is going to say fill color. When you click that, go ahead and click the white option, which will then cover up the grid form on the canvas, but also our icons will disappear. So what we're going to do is come over here, click send to back so that it's sent to the bottom layer and all of the icons show up on this white background. So I'm able to immediately notice, okay, these 3 icons are all part of the incident handling stage. So I want you guys to do that now. Go ahead and get these up there. Go ahead and take about 20 seconds or so. Type incident handling, align the text to the top center, change the background color to white, and then send it to the back. So go ahead and do that now so that we can show that each of these icons are part of a separate stage in the software delivery lifecycle. Okay. So now let's move on to the 4th and final section that we have on the left-hand side here. And that's going to be link style. So when you click on that, you'll see these 4 different arrows. And there's really not much difference between these arrows. They function in the same way. However, from an aesthetic perspective, it can be a very important section because depending on how you're structuring your value stream, it's going to look a little different, and it's going to lend itself to having either straight arrows or having them curved in specific ways. And so you have ultimate control over how your links are set up and how those connections look. And there's 2 different ways that you can use these. The one that I recommend is to take a look at each of these, figure out which one you want to use, at least for the time being, and simply click on it, which will close the menu. And then any of the links that you draw, which we'll see how to do so in a minute, will be in that style. However, another option, if you so choose, is to drag and drop the links and then connect them from there. So what I'll have you do is open up the link style, and I want you to click on the curved line at the very bottom. So this is the 4th option, the very bottom option for your links. From there, I want you to hover over the phone icon, at which point you will see 4 little circles inside of the phone. So if you click and hold that circular button inside the phone, you'll then be able to drag a line between the phone and Servicenow to show that there is a connection between these 2 icons. And I then want you to repeat those last 2 steps with the letter icon to show that the letter and the phone are flowing into Servicenow. So let's go ahead and give that a try here. So I'll close this menu. I will come over here and I will go down and I will click on this curved line at the bottom. When I do, the menu closes. Then when I hover over the phone, you'll see that these 4 little circles show up. I'll click and hold my mouse here, and you'll see that I can draw a line to Servicenow. And then when it comes in, boom, it's curved, which is exactly what I want it to be. I will then do the same thing up here. with the letter icon. And so you'll see that the information flows between the letter icon and Servicenow. So now go ahead and do the same thing in your designer menu. Repeat those steps for me, draw those 2 lines, and I'll give you guys about 15 seconds to do that here. Okay. So now one thing we're going to see is that before we move on, I want you to double click your link, because when you double click your link, you'll be able to see a menu that looks very similar to what we explored with the shapes. You're able to add text to your link so that you can immediately notice as you look at it what that link dictates and what that connection means. You can change the text font, size, and properties. You can change the highlight of the text for the link. You can change the color of the link. You can change the layering of the link so that it appears in front of or behind certain things. And you can change the grouping so you can add it to different groups. You can also change the arrow properties, and you can add text on the front end or the back end by changing text for the from or to. And then from there, you can change arrow properties like the size of the arrow, the direction of the arrow, or the design of the arrow. You can also change the color of the arrow too, if you would like. So we're going to practice doing some of this now. So I want you to double click on your phone link, add the words phone request, change the text background to white so that it shows up a little bit easier on your line. And then I want you to change the arrow direction, moving away from the phone, so we can see that this is a one-way flow rather than two-way. So I'll switch over to my screen. We'll double click, and I will type in phone request. And you'll see that as I type, it actually shows up on the link so I can see what it looks like. You'll then come over here to the first square. You will click on that, and you'll see that while the background is transparent, if we click on this white button, you'll see that there's then that highlighted ability to see over the link. And then from there, I want you to come down, and on these arrow keys, I want you to click the second arrow next to the phone, which will show you a number of different designs as well as different directions. So if I go ahead and switch the direction of this, you will see that now the arrow is pointing away from the call and going into Servicenow. So let's go ahead and try that. So I'll bring up this screen here. I'll bring up the things that you need to do and go ahead and give it a try. You're welcome to do the same with email request as well. And so as you're finishing this up, you'll start to notice why we're walking through each of these individual steps. Because what we've just done is build a rudimentary part of a value stream. We're showing what happens at the very beginning of an incident handling process. And if you look at this, it makes perfect sense. Okay, there's a phone request that comes in, the team puts it in Servicenow. There's an email request that comes in. The team also puts that in Servicenow. So all of these features and functionalities, when put together, can help you to tell a great story about what has to happen to get your code from simply an idea or a request into the value stream and turn it into something that will satisfy your customers. All right. So for additional actions, you can see in the upper right-hand corner that if you click on those 3 dots, if you click on the button associated with those 3 dots, you'll see a menu that looks like this. And you'll see a number of typical things in there like undo and redo. If you accidentally deleted something, you can undo it. You can cut and copy and paste. But from there, I want to point out just a couple things. First, I discussed at the front end of our presentation that this is made to be collaborative. And in this area, if you click that share icon, you're able to forward your value stream over to one of your colleagues. When you click on the share icon, you can enter their email. They'll receive an outreach saying that you've shared this with them, along with an invitation to register for the value stream designer if they have never done so. And then from there, they can access the value stream that you've shared with them from that home menu when they click in the share section. And so you guys can work together on this and build out the value stream in the most accurate way possible. The other thing that I want to point out, as I touched on earlier, if there's ever an icon, whether it's a flow icon or an application icon, that doesn't quite get the job done for you, perhaps it's a tool that you're using that just isn't listed, or one thing I like to say if you're using a homegrown tool is to import your own logo, your own company's logo. You can do that from here by clicking upload icon. And then from there, that uploaded icon will be available for you to drag and drop onto your value stream as you see fit. So before we move on to the next section, if I come over here and click this, you'll see this is where we can access all of those different menus. And since we're going to be starting this assessment from scratch, we'll go ahead and delete each of these things. So now we have a blank canvas to be able to work with as we move into the assessment portion of our workshop. Okay. So as I walk through this assessment, this is meant to be a framework or questionnaire to help you start to think about what your software delivery process looks like. I'm going to be asking you questions around your current state value stream, and just for ease of organization and ease of flow, these are the different stages that we'll be talking about. Now, I recognize that the way that your company may describe stages may be different. You also may be working in a waterfall environment rather than a DevOps environment, whereas some of these stages are more commonly associated with the DevOps infinity symbol. And that's okay. Your answers to the questions that I'll be asking are just as valid. And value stream mapping and building out your value stream and visualizing it is going to be just as important with whatever methodology you use. So I want you to know you can certainly participate as well. And I also want to encourage you that if as we're going through, there's a question that you don't know, that is fine. What you can do if you really have no idea how to answer that question, you could take a rectangle from the flow shapes and type a little text in there and say, if you know that, let's say, Jeremy is responsible for the incident management, you can say, Jeremy, please fill this in later, and then connect with Jeremy after the service. And so as we're working our way through, our goal is for us to be able to map out a basic value stream map and a value stream tool chain design for you to then be able to turn into a flow stream, for you to be able to turn into a map that flows from beginning to end and collaborate with your team on it. So what we're going to be doing today is kind of the first step, just starting to take these different tool structures and flows that we have in our mind and get them down on a canvas so that we can then encourage discussion internally. And as we walk through, I'll be walking through an example hypothetical scenario so you can start to see how this might build out. But as I'm going through, I want you to think about this for yourself. And I want you to think about this for your organization. And if you think you might know, but you're afraid you'll be wrong, go ahead and put it in there anyway. As you start to socialize this internally, your colleagues will be there to correct you if something's wrong. It'll be the start of a good conversation so that by the time this is all said and done, you will have the most accurate tool chain flow available so that you can start encouraging these changes to be made internally and collaborate with your team. So to start things off, we want to look at that point A type of thing. So when an idea comes up, when software enters the value stream and when work begins. And there's two different things, there's two different angles that we're going to take. We're requirements management. So if somebody comes up with a great idea, an idea for a new feature, what happens? And also incident management. So if somebody finds something in production and wants to bring it to your attention, we'll discuss that as well. So for this first section and for this first question, I want you to think about in your software delivery environment, when somebody has a new idea for a feature or an enhancement, what happens? What is that first step that they need to take in order to get that idea in front of the right people that can take action on it? Now, I understand that every company has different methods. Perhaps some are more manual. Perhaps others have a repository or an area that they collect new ideas. Perhaps there's a Slack channel. All of these could be areas where these new ideas for software are being shared. So if somebody comes up with the next big thing, where does it start? And in this hypothetical scenario I'll be walking through with you, what happens is that, let's say Tim comes up with an amazing idea that's going to revolutionize our product. I send it via email to the project and portfolio team, and that idea then gets put into Servicenow. So what I'm going to do is show that somebody sends an email and it goes into Servicenow. So I'll come back over here to my designer. I will come here and I will type Servicenow. I'll drag that icon on here. And then since this is being done via email, I'm going to come over here, drag a letter, and then show that there is this connection. So I'll restructure it. And since information flows one way, what I'm going to do is double click here. And I'm going to then change the direction of the arrow so that it's going from the email into Servicenow, because that is how this works. So I will even type out email. I'll change the background so that now I can start this value stream by saying somebody sends an email into Servicenow. So go ahead and think about how this works in your software delivery organization. Since this may require a little bit of thinking, and for some people it may be multiple steps, not just that one, I'll go ahead and give a little extra time. So let's take about 45 seconds to a minute. Think about each of the steps that are required in order to move from this new grand idea and start entering this workflow. So go ahead and think about that here for a minute. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. But for now, just go ahead and think about what this looks like in your organization. I'll give you about 15 or 20 more seconds. Okay, excellent. So the next step that I want you to think about is, at the end of the day, all ideas aren't created equal. Some ideas may be excellent and something that we want to get a move on immediately. Other ideas may just not align strategically with what we want to do. And still other ideas may just be completely off the wall and not something that's relevant at all to our product. I mean, these things happen. And so a lot of times there may be some sort of vetting that comes into play. So before something enters into the backlog or it needs to be prioritized, what sort of vetting process is there? Is there any sort of vetting process? What approvals are needed in order to greenlight incoming new features? what are some of these things that have to happen in order for this new feature to move forward and start being actioned on? So in the example scenario that I'm providing here in this hypothetical situation, what we see is that there's actually a delineation here based upon the cost in man hours and billable time that this project will take. So if it's going to require over $10,000 worth of investment, if it's a larger enhancement, then this needs to be approved by a committee. So this is something that would then flow from that group in ServiceNow over to the project approval committee, as they'll take a look during their weekly meetings and figure out which of these are actually useful, which of these should we move on, which of these can we prioritize for later, and which should just be thrown in the trash. If it's under $10,000, and if it's something that's a little bit of a smaller project, then what happens then is the project and portfolio manager, who's in charge of greenlighting new features, she will take a look at them and she'll figure out, okay, is this something that's aligned strategically with our goals? And if so, she'll greenlight it. If not, she'll go ahead and either prioritize it for later or she'll not use it. So that's where the delineation happens here, is based on cost. And so I will come over here. I'll actually go to flow icons because these are people. And so what I'll do is I'll scroll down here to professions. I'll say this can look like my project manager. I'll bring her there. And then I want a group. So let me come up here and search for group. Here's a group of people. I will drag and drop them up here. And then I'm actually going to switch to this line. And I will draw this here. And I will draw this there. And so what we can see is if I double click here, I will type out over 10K so that I know as I look at this, this is the flow that it takes if it's over $10,000. I will come down here, type out under 10K. And I'll go ahead and leave this going in both directions because these teams will need to update the information in ServiceNow as well. So it's going to flow both ways, and I will leave it like this. So go ahead and take another minute, and as you're thinking through your vetting or approval processes for new features, think about what those look like and go ahead and get them outlined here in your value stream. Think about what it looks like to get a new idea greenlit and what that process needs to be. I'll give you about another minute as you're thinking through that process and as you're starting to map it out. And again, just as a reminder, even if you don't know for sure, go ahead and take your best guess. And if you really don't know, if you're just thinking to yourself, this isn't where I am in the organization, I'm not sure, go ahead and leave yourself a note so that you can check with the right person and get this updated accordingly. Give it another 30 or 40 seconds here. Okay. So now that we've taken a look at any vetting or approval processes that need to occur for new features, let's see what has to happen next. So after whoever is the power that be that decides, okay, we're moving forward with this idea. This is something that we're going to want in our product. This is awesome. It's going to revolutionize the game. We need this now. After you've decided to move forward, what is the next step? What has to happen? How is that structure broken down, and how is that laid out in a way that the developers can then take action on? So in this scenario, what needs to happen is based upon whether they've decided to go or no go, either the committee or the project manager is going to need to submit requirements. So they're going to submit requirement documentation into Confluence. Once those requirement documents are placed into Confluence, that new feature is then broken down into epics within Jira, and those epics are further broken down into stories within Jira. And so you'll see that structure here on my slide. So I will come over here to the designer, and I will walk through that now. So let me come up here, and I will go ahead and search for Confluence. Drag that over here. And so then I'll drag this and drag this. So now requirements documentation needs to flow from either of these groups into Confluence. I'll change the background here. And because this is going one way, I'm going to go ahead and change the direction of the arrow, flowing away from the committee and into Confluence. And I will do the same thing here. So requirements, update this, and I will have the arrow flowing from the project manager into Confluence as well. And so from these requirements documents, we need to break them down in Jira into epics and stories. So I will drag and drop the Jira icon over here. I'll do the same with another Jira icon. I'll create a downward arrow. I'll line that up. And I will say epics. We'll change that to flow from Confluence to Jira. And from there, from the epics, we will break those down into stories. And we will see that flow set up here. So I'm going to come back over here to the deck, and I'm going to give you another minute. Think about this. And after that go forward has been decided on and that new feature or that enhancement is going to be added to the product, think about what happens next and start to build that into your burgeoning value stream map. I'll give you another minute to finish this off. Give it another 30 seconds or so. All right. So as we take a look at the next step, let's go ahead and think about the other side of the coin. So we walked through what happens if somebody comes up with the next big idea, that feature that's going to change everything. But what if it's not a new feature, but instead it's, there's an issue in production. somebody is trying to access the cart online and it doesn't work. So what we need to do here is we are going to then take a look and think about how users or customers report issues from production. And so what's going to happen here is we're going to think about what has to happen in order for that issue from the field to get reported into our flow, so into our software delivery lifecycle. So if there's an issue, what happens next? So what we're going to do now, and as we start to think about that, as we start to think about how they report issues, we're going to take a look at this in the hypothetical scenario as such. So there's a tier 1 support team that takes calls and emails from customers or from internal users that have difficulties. This tier 1 team is there to support for any very simple sort of issues, like if there's a password that they need updated, or if there's something very simple that can be taken care of, tier 1 will just knock it out. Now, if there's something that is not going to, if there's something that will be more difficult, something that's more complex, then tier 1 will escalate to tier 2, and they will do so by submitting a ticket in Servicenow. And so we'll come on over here to the other screen, and I will draw that out. So if we come down here, I'll scroll back down to professions. So I'll grab this person here with the headset as my technical support. And I'll scroll back up to IT, and I'll have a phone, and I'll have an email support. So as we come over here, what I will do is I will then drag this over here, and I will drag this one here to show that there is that connection. And from there, I will come up here to Servicenow for the escalation. And I will then drag and drop it here. So I actually see that there is a question in the chat asking how to straighten line connectors. So if you click on the line, what you'll see is that, you'll see that there's a number of different icons that you have showing up on the line. So you can grab these and manipulate the line as you see fit. So if you want to give it a different structure like this, if you want to shift back and forth, or if you need to straighten the line, if there's anything that needs to be done in order to straighten the line, I'd recommend one of two things. First of all, you'll see here I've got this phone icon. There's this little groove in the middle. Probably the simplest way, if you want just a straight line, is if I delete this and come up here, I can select the straight line. And what that'll do is then give me a straight line that may be slightly crooked, so then I can readjust it as so. Now, if that doesn't quite do the job, and if you still want to make sure that you have a straight line, as example, I see this here that I need to fix, I can grab hold of any part of the line and I can restructure it. Or if I grab on this little icon down here, you'll see that you can move the line accordingly. And by doing so, I've then straightened the line and had it come into the top. And if there's a third option, if you've gone ahead and you've used one of the curved areas and you still need to straighten it out a little bit, my recommendation is to grab hold of whichever icon it's coming from and then move that around until you get it to the right spot. So these are some of the things that you can do with the lines in order to get that as visually appealing as possible. I know one thing that I did just show very quickly is the ability to move from one side to the top, which in this case was very helpful because it shows the flow. But hopefully, based on whoever answered that question about straightening the line, hopefully I was able to answer it okay for you. I'd say the best thing to do is play with the icons, play with the lines, and try to figure out the best way to move those around in a way that looks as good as possible. So So if I come over here and I type email request, then phone request, I will do that. I'll change the direction. I'll highlight this as well. Change the direction. Then we should be good to go from there. And then I'll say escalate to tier 2. And I'll change the direction from there. So go ahead and finish thinking about this particular question, how users or customers report issues from production, and give it some additional thought. Give you guys about 20 more seconds on this one. Think about how that report structure is set up. All right. So now as we're looking into incident management, let's think about how after these issues are reported, how they then enter into the software delivery value stream. So again, like features, not every issue is going to require updating the code. So how do they then enter the backlog? How do they enter into the software delivery value stream? Well, as this example, if tier 2 can't figure it out, if it requires something in the code, they're going to escalate to a manager on tier 3, who will then take whatever issue is going on and convert it into a bug and add that bug into Jira after it's been confirmed to be an issue with the code. So I will come over here. I will go over to the value stream designer. And let me come in here. I'll go ahead and grab this person. I'll say this can be tier 3. Actually, I forgot to change that back, so I'll come over here. I'll say that this is tier 3. Escalate to tier 3. I'll have that flowing from here to here. Go ahead and update the text background. All right. So go ahead and finish thinking about this here. Give you another 20 seconds or so. All right. So once it's time to start coding, think about where your developers are writing or storing their code. So what happens when they're beginning their code? What goes on from there? And so as we think about this, once they grab the story from Jira, in this hypothetical scenario, we're going to say that the repositories are kept in a Git environment. So I will go ahead and I'll jump over here. I'll draw this line here. I'll say bug. And then I will draw. So I'll come over here. I'll type in Git. I'll drag and drop that over here. So I'll go ahead and draw this line. I'll rearrange so that it's straight. And I will type out code to say that the code is flowing into the Git environment from Jira. So go ahead and think about this now, where your developers are writing and storing their code. And I'll give you guys a few seconds to think about that here. where are they writing and storing their code? All right. So now I want you to think about if there's any tools that you're using for code reviews. So what sort of tools are you using for code reviews, and what does that look like? And I think now that I've shown you how to use it in the designer, from here I'll ask the question, and I'll let you guys start to think about how this works in code reviews. So are there any tools or anything like that that you're using for peer level code reviews? Now, in this case, in this training scenario, Bitbucket is the tool that's being used for code reviews. So go ahead and think about that. If there's any tools that you are using for code reviews, give that some thought and go ahead and add that to your value stream accordingly. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to think about that and see if there's any tools that you're using for code reviews. Okay. The next question we have, as we move into builds, what are your developers using for new builds? What are they using for this stage in order to create those new builds? Are they using something like Jenkins, or are they using another tool for those new builds that they're creating? And in this training scenario, you'll see that Bitbucket is also the tool that's being used for builds. So go ahead and think about that, and go ahead and add that to your value stream here. I'll give you guys a few seconds to think about that and get this added to your value stream. All right, the next step, let's think about testing for a minute. So what tools, if any, are you using to track your tests? Where are your tests occurring? Is there anything automated, or is all of this manual? What is being used for testing in your value stream? Now, in this example, we see that test cases are being sent to Micro Focus ALM, and from there, they're being turned into from there, any defects that are found are then turned into bugs and sent back to the Jira story to be acted upon. So go ahead and think about, in the context of your testing, what tools, if any, are being used. I'll give you guys a few seconds to think about that here. Think about what tools, if any, are being used to track your testing. Okay. So as we think about testing a little bit more, is there any automated code scanning that's happening in this? What is being used to locate things like vulnerabilities? Is there any automated process, or is all of this being done manually as well? Now, in this example, our security team is doing manual scans of the code to be able to see if they can identify any vulnerabilities. So this is all being done manually by the security team. So think about if there's any automated code scanning during these reviews or during these tests. What does that look like? Is that happening? And if so, how? So go ahead and think about that here. Okay. So if you've been able to test, where do the results go? So where do the results of those code reviews or those tests that you're conducting, what happens? So you'll see that there's, in this training scenario, the results are sent to Microsoft Teams. And from there, somebody in Microsoft Teams then updates a central document to be able to track the results of those tests and those code reviews. So think about how that works and see if there's any way for you to be able to, is there anything that goes on in that, where those results of the code reviews. So think about that and where the results are sent and how people are updated on that. Okay. So what happens once you're ready to push your code to a staging environment? So everything looks all right. You're ready to move into a staging environment. What happens next? Are there any change requests that you need? Are there any approvals that are required? What does that look like in your environment when it comes time to push your code into a staging environment? Now, one example that we see here. So once the code is ready to go into a staging environment, there's a request for the smoke test environment that is made to the owner of that environment. From there, regression testing is done in that environment within Micro Focus ALM. So what has to happen once you're ready to move to a staging environment? Take a few seconds and think about that and add that to your value stream map. Think about what has to happen once you're ready to move to a staging environment. Okay, so it's showtime. Now you're ready to push your code into production. So once things have been approved, once all of the tests have come through, everything's looking good, you're ready to go from staging to production. What is that process? Are there any additional approvals that are needed? Is there somebody that needs to sign off? In this case, we see that the ops team is alerted from the development team. And from there, the operations team is the one that's going to set this up and that's going to give the go-ahead and the green light. So what happens once you are approved and ready to push your code to production? So during the release process, where or how are you tracking the records of what was in the release? So how are you tracking that, if at all? In this example, we see that the release records are sent over to Confluence, and from there, they're synchronized with Jira automatically. So then that's able to go back into the original Jira project so we can track those releases. So what does this look like for you? Go ahead and think about that here. Finally, when it's time to deploy, what does the deployment process to production look like? What does that process seem to do? So in this case, we see that in order to deploy to production, our operations team is able to use Octopus deploy, and from there, release into a production environment. So this is something that the team's experimenting with. They're trying something new. They're looking to work their way toward every other week deployment and getting closer and closer to continuous delivery. So what does deployment look like to you? Go ahead and take a few seconds and think about that. Okay. So this concludes the assessment portion. And I'm going to leave you with a little bit of homework here. Now that we're done, I want you to verify what you've been able to create. And I want you to run it by folks on your team, just to make sure that if there's sections you're not 100% sure on, that they're correct. During these conversations, there can sometimes be disagreement, argument, other thoughts, and that's awesome because the goal is getting to a value stream map that looks as accurate as possible. And from there, you can arrange it by stages. So the one that we did today, after just a little bit of arranging, can then look like this. So we can see by the work intake, development, staging, and deploy, this is now what it looks like. So now that you've mapped out your value stream, what should you do next? We'll talk briefly about value stream management, eliminating waste, and using a value stream management platform. So we now know that since we have a map, that alone is not enough. We can't do anything or see any impact from this map unless we take action on it. Value stream mapping is not value stream management. We need to effectively manage the value stream so that we can begin to improve the value stream. And the way that we do that can be based on this work by Tapping, Loister, and Schuker. You'll see that we walked through two of these steps today. We chose the software delivery value stream, and we mapped the current state. But there's still many more opportunities for us to manage this further. We can identify lean metrics. We need to map the future state, and we need to create Kaizen improvement plans and act on them. So here are some ideas of lean principles. Now, this could be a section, an entire presentation in and of itself, but I'd say definitely do some additional digging after today's presentation to learn about lean principles yourself and how you can use them alongside your value stream map. But I want to hone in on waste, which are activities that don't bring any value to the customer and they're not willing to pay for. There's a number of different types of waste. Like as an example, if you've got 4 people that for 4 hours a day are waiting around and not able to do any work, that's talent waste. But we can't just get rid of all the waste because that could have a negative impact on the rest of the value stream. We have to classify them by value added, non-value added, essential, and non-value added, non-essential. And by doing so, we can then determine whether we want to optimize it, minimize it, or eliminate the waste. You'll see here's an example of a current state map. In this hypothetical scenario, we've been able to, we see that we're waiting for almost 2 weeks and we're working for only 4.5 hours. And if we remove those steps and if we kind of tighten it up a bit, you'll see that that time is greatly reduced. So we see that before and after, we're able to save almost over a week's worth of time by trimming out some of those undesirable activities. So how can you take action? Take a look at your value stream, begin to pinpoint some of the immediate opportunities that exist there to add feedback loops, to be able to cut out steps, to eliminate steps, to automate certain things, and go from there. Now, again, my name is Tim Styling. I'm from ConnectAll, and we have a value stream management platform that helps organizations see, measure, and automate their software delivery value streams. We were able to see a little bit today using the Value Stream Designer. But then when it comes to measuring and automating, this allows us to take action on the value stream map that we were able to discuss today. So Insights allows you to harvest and then display the most relevant metrics. Automation allows you to automate the flow of information between the different tools in your value stream so you can cut down on the different steps that are wasteful within your value stream. So for today, we talked about the basics of value stream mapping. We talked about how to use the Value Stream Designer, I had you participate in a short value stream assessment, and I gave you very briefly some strategies for reducing waste. After today's call, I'll be sending over some additional information and continual tips to help you build on what you learned from this workshop. If you want to learn more about ConnectAll, or if you want to meet with somebody to go over your map, or even to help you and your team structure the map, you're welcome to reach out to us. And you can contact me at any point from here. Here's my contact information, my phone number, my email, and my LinkedIn. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's session. I hope that everything went well, and I will turn things over to you, Cody.
Thank you, Tim. And I really appreciate all the work that went into putting together not only the walkthrough, but helping us walk through how to create our own value streams. I was following along myself, and I found this tool super useful. So thank you so much for sharing this.
All right, absolutely.
So to our audience, I would like to remind them that today's session was recorded. So following this program, you will receive an email with a link to access the recording on demand. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section. So we do have those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give away. Our first winner is Bonnie W. Our second winner is Vrej A. Our third winner is Peter G. And our fourth and final winner is Francile Z. So to the 4 of you, congratulations. Please keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. But if you don't see that email, just check your spam folder. I would like to thank ConnectAll for sponsoring today's workshop. And to you, our audience, we really appreciate you spending time with us today. We ask for an extra moment of your time to fill out a brief post-webinar survey that will pop up on your screen here in just a moment. But otherwise, we do hope to see you at an upcoming Techstrong learning program. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. And Tim, thank you once again.
Great. Thank you, Cody. And thanks, everyone, for joining. And congratulations to the winners of the gift cards. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.